Welcome back to Whatever We Want, a podcast about celebrating storytelling. We're once again not talking about any movies or TV shows because at the time of recording, there have been no updates to the strikes, and we're standing in solidarity with the writers and actors. So today, instead, we're talking video games, my boy, my dude.
Oh, yeah. We're
going to go through and talk. I was thinking maybe we could each pick one or two of our favorite video games that have, like, good stories. To answer, like, basically the question we're answering today is, what is your favorite video game
narrative?
What's your favorite story? What is your video game narrative? Or what is your favorite story told through the medium of video games?
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good way to put
it. I brought my glasses on. Sophistication.
You're like, oh, today I get to be nerdy like Daniel.
No, what has happened is I'm going on vacation next week, and I realized I only have exactly enough context for like a week, and I'm saving it for vacation. So let's jump in. Do you want to go first? What is one of your favorite?
No, actually, I want to let you go first because like I have a library that we could go into, but I kind of want to see where you are first, and then I can get the vibe off of that.
This is more like favorite for myself personally because I know there are good ones, but that's what I think you're more experts on those. So I kind of want to talk to one that I'm more an expert on. So I want to talk about the first one I want to talk about is Portal 2. That is probably my favorite story told through a video game. And I know you know about it, but I kind of just want to like talk through it, and so we can talk through like the story points and like what makes it a good story told through video games.
Well, first, should we go over Portal 1? Like a synopsis of that. Did you ever play Portal 1?
I've played parts of it, and I know the general story, but sure, yeah. What is your synopsis of Portal 1?
I mean, we have Shell, right?
Shell?
Yeah, that's the.
But let's like we should lay the groundwork of the world. So like
that's like her name.
I think at least in Portal 2. I mean, I think that honestly, maybe we don't go through Portal 1 just yet. Let's just talk about Portal 2.
Yeah, okay, fair.
You don't need.
You don't really need Portal 1. Yeah,
it adds to it a bit, but like what I like is, at least for me, when my experience of Portal 2 was like you just wake up and you're in this like test facility, but it's like really run down. Like you're in this like kind of government or like secret private institution that is like doing all these tests, and there's like you're in a chamber, and apparently there's like tons of chambers of like test subjects, but I think they've all malfunctioned. I think everyone, basically all the other test subjects, are either still in stasis or have like died. I'm pretty sure they're gone, and you're like the only one left, and you somehow like wake up. You're trying to like escape basically, and you meet up with this companion guy called like Wheatley, who's like this robot that can plug into things but isn't like fully in control, and is kind of like this dorky robot that is kind of not the most competent, and you're trying to escape this like prison that basically you're held in, this testing facility, this science testing facility, and there's like the looming threat of like this AI that you don't want to wake up. Like she is like the big bad, the big villain.
Yeah.
And then you get this portal gun, which is like the name Portal, and basically it's like a puzzle game where the testing that you were doing in this lab uses this portal gun where you can shoot portals on white walls and like travel from portal to portal. And it creates a lot of interesting dynamics with like puzzles and stuff. But basically, long story short, you make your way up, and like you think you're about to escape, but you wake up Gladys, which is the AI that you were trying not to wake up, who you think is going to be like the villain. And to combat that, you plug in Wheatley, your like companion, like dorky guy, into the machine to like overthrow her and take her down, shut her down. And he does that. But in doing that, he gains all this power, and he realizes he's fed up of being known as like the dorky dumb robot, and he gets power hungry and then kind of takes over and becomes even worse than Gladys was, because at least Gladys, the first AI, knew what she was capable of and like her primary initiative. Wheatley has no self-control or like concept of right and wrong really, or anything. So he's just going crazy with all the power he has. And then he thrusts you. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I'm listening. This is pretty good synopsis.
Thank you.
I have notes of things later on. I'm gonna let you finish, and then I'll get in there. But yeah.
And then so basically Wheatley, and I think that's kind of like Act 1 is like, or like if you're thinking of like a 3-act story structure, which is what I've been trained to think in. Act 1 is like you wake up, that's like the inciting incident, you're like having to escape, and then the culmination of, I guess, of Act 1 would be like Wheatley takes over and gets power hungry, and then instead of releasing you like you guys promised you would escape together, he throws you down even further into like the depths of this testing facility, and you're trapped down there with the other AI, Gladys, who's like taken over a potato, which is really funny. Like that's how she is. Just like the rest of the game is like she's just in this potato battery. But then you're Act 2, which is like basically the whole of the story is just climbing out of the testing facility. You start like at the bottom level, and like there are tons of obstacles and challenges because like it's been dozens if not hundreds of years that you've been in like stasis, and so like the factory has been like destroyed and it's not been maintained, so you have to like find creative ways to escape. And then after you eventually climb out of the whole thing, you have to fight Wheatley again with Gladys, the original AI, and you have to ultimately make a decision to trust Gladys again and plug her in. And she does let you go though at the end, spoiler alert, but that's like the culmination is Act 3 is like getting out and coming up with a plan to defeat Wheatley. So yeah, I just think it's a really interesting story that's told over the course of that, and it's a really fun puzzle game and gaming experience in itself. So it has both aspects, the game experience and the story, that I think is just really interesting, like sci-fi futuristic kind of story.
I think you told that pretty well. For anybody that's not familiar with Portal, that's pretty good. Also, I feel like that's a good way to explain it as somebody who's only potentially played that game. I don't know if you've read up on any of the lore or any of the other stuff that goes around into that.
Not
because
really.
there's a lot of stuff that goes in the Portal. It's part of the Half-Life universe, yeah. So like
I did know that, yeah.
Universe. Well, technically multiverse.
Another game. Oh,
yeah. So, but I'm pretty sure in that case, with that aperture, is the same actual universe in that multiverse. If that makes sense, right? It's like think of it like MCU. Like you have that like universe, and then you have other. Anywho,
Aperture is the name of the science
facility
like, organization.
That, like, is all underground. That
does the testing.
That you Shell the
Aperture
main
Laboratories
gets thrown into. Yeah.
Their leader is J.K. Simmons.
Yeah, Ron Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. Cave Johnson, right?
Cave Johnson, yeah, Cave. Why did I say
Ron Johnson? Ron Swanson?
Maybe that's why. But yeah, no, Cave. But here's the thing. I don't know if you knew this, Jake, but you pick up on it through dialogue.
I don't know if you knew his name was Cave Johnson, so why should I trust anything you're about
GLaDOS,
to say? I'm just kidding.
She was actually the AI built off of his assistant.
I think I did hear that.
Her consciousness
off
of
of
memory.
Cave's assistant, right?
Yeah. That he was also having an affair with. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Wow. That's deep lore.
And it was funny. The note I was going to say was like when you're like, oh, when Wheatley got plugged in and he's like worse than GLaDOS. Like, yes, he was worse, but technically not, because I'm not sure if you remember this. You remember like you had to put like different cores like on in like that boss fight. The whole reason why there's different personality cores in the first place is because when GLaDOS was originally designed, right, she tried to fill in the whole facility with neurotoxic gas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think I did hear that, yeah. I think I must have seen one of these YouTube, like, lore explanation videos a while ago, because everything you're saying is like, oh, that seems really familiar.
You're like, oh, yeah, I remember that.
I just don't remember it, like, consciously, yeah.
Yeah, so what they were trying to do is they were trying to have, like, there's a logical core, there was a emotion core, and then there was, like, some other core that they put in there. I'm trying to remember the third one. Like a human or ethic core, I think.
What core do you think you resonate with?
I resonate with space core because I like space.
Space.
I like space, but no.
I resonate with ab core because I work my abs.
Yes, you work your abs out. You're like, yeah, man. But no, it's funny because like it was funny to see like her relationship with Shell as like the one test subject.
Is Shell the protagonist in 1 and 2, or is it a different?
Both.
Okay,
in both. Yeah.
I didn't know that was her name. Gotcha.
Which what led to her at the end. She's like, I could go against my word, but it's just too dang hard to kill you, so I'm going to let you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... Also, you forgot to mention, in the final act, the way that they win is the panels that we were talking about, where they do the portal stuff. They use moon dust.
They suck it to the moon.
They go to the moon. They literally, like... It was a beautiful shot to where they, like... Like, you finally get to, like, the top level of the facility, and, like, the ceiling kind of caves in. You get, like, a shot of the moon.
And
then,
also,
like,
starting out, like, the only portals or locations you can shoot portals are, like, white surfaces. And so then, like, at the end, like, the panels open up, and, like, the moon is, like, bright white.
That's what I'm saying. The panels themselves, right, the white surfaces, are made from moon dust.
Yeah. I don't know if explicit. The game did a really good job of like setting that up at the end, because like when I saw, but also like making me feel clever. Like I didn't feel like, oh, this was something that was like they told me exactly to do this. I just saw it open up and then shot it at the moon.
you're
I
like,
could be misremembering, but I was just like, oh my gosh, I felt like a genius in that moment, and it also just like all made sense that was like the culmination. But it wasn't like, I didn't feel like it had told me explicitly to do that, and I felt like very accomplished that I had come up with that myself, which I think is like the mark of a good game mechanic, especially a finale like that.
Hold on. Let me actually Google something quick, because I just remembered something. How long is it? Doesn't it take like light 1 second to get from us to the moon?
With light?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Because I remember
when
in that, like, because you do the shot, right? Because it like sets you up to do the shot. I remember there being like a solid second where nothing happens, and then it hits. That's cool. Which, honestly, if Valve did that purposely, that would be even doper, showing that, like, the portal, when you shoot it, is moving at light speed, and there's still, like, still applies the physics there.
I think it's probably a little less than light speed. Just like thinking back, because you see the beam comes out, and it doesn't just automatically.
That is true.
Kind of close. I don't know.
But, you know, I'm just saying, like, if you think, like, that's pretty cool. But, that's a pretty good synopsis, Jake. I think you did a pretty good job there. What I think tends, or what lends, and this is probably going to be the major point of this podcast, is like, why is it better?
Yeah, why is it a good story
in game as compared to, like, say, another medium? Like, why is the story better to do it through like a game medium instead of like through another medium? So you can answer that first, and I can get into
I think the puzzle aspect, because like it does get a little repetitive in the middle when you're just climbing up. Like you're just doing level after level of like trying to climb up these different puzzles to get closer to the top. And it's just portal puzzle. I think in the game it's interesting and compelling because it's like you're figuring out all these different combinations each time, whereas if it was like a movie or TV show, you'd just be watching them do a puzzle with a twist, and like which I think is different when you're in the moment figuring out yourself versus just experiencing someone do basically a very similar thing over and over again. I think the game it would be more fun because you're figuring out something different each time versus watching someone figure out something different each time that's basically the same. Yeah.
No, I think it's really well said. I mean, the mechanics, I feel like, definitely lean into having the player be more immersive in that sense. And that's one of the reasons why I got into game design as compared to, like, specifically doing, like, animation or movies. Because I like being in a role to where I can tell stories where a player is doing the action. Like, they're immersed into that. And I think that's one thing that Valve does good with, like, really any of their games, which is they're giving the player opportunities to not only be immersed in the world and the story, but also that they have the mechanics to back it up. So that way there's always some kind of intrigue, or there's always some kind of risk that comes along with choices that they make.
What do you think like makes this a good story, just period? Like outside of video game, whatever, like why is it a good story, do you think?
Well, one, it puts us in a unique perspective of, I mean, it's dystopian in a way, where it's like, society's gone to crap.
Yeah, it's got the cool sci-fi vibe.
Yeah, it has that sci-fi vibe, right? But at the same time, it's different because it's able to be isolated while still also having the juxtaposition of this entire huge, big facility. That's like one of the crazy things about it. It's like you are the like sole survivor of this giant facility that is still like running by itself.
Makes me think about like loneliness, and if you were to wake up like a million years in the future, whatever, what that would do psychologically to a person. And also you have the trope of like not enemies to lovers, but like enemies that are forced to work together, like the relationship between Gladys and the protagonist, what's her, Shell.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting that like the storytelling mechanic that, I mean, like most video games characters don't do this, but like Shell doesn't talk as the protagonist.
That's one of the things I remember from the beginning. That's why I love. Remember in the beginning when they're like, "Oh, say apple," and it's like you hit the jump button and then you jump. You're like, "Well, you just jumped. You didn't say anything. Maybe your brain's still waking up."
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they chose to only have the robots talk as well and gave them more of a personality that, like you said, was, I guess, is infused based on real people. I think that's a really interesting choice and lends to some good humorous moments and just interesting character dynamics. I think that's really cool.
The humanity in the robots too, with their personality as well. The ability to be corrupted by power, which is what Wheatley ultimately comes into.
Who?
Wheatley.
Oh, okay. For me, some reason it lagged and it sounded you said like Leetly, and I was like, who's Leetly?
No.
Anyways.
Also, I was Googling to make sure I was saying her name right. It is Chell, so it's Shell. It's not Shell, it's Chell.
Shello. Okay. Anyways, I think we should move on from Portal. I think we covered that very well. Yeah, I like Portal. 10 out of 10. All right, next.
I like space.
What do you think is your game?
For me, story-wise, like
yours.
growing up with like shooters, I think one of the most, if not arguably the most iconic like FPS is the OG Modern Warfare 2. For
who would have thought? You would have said that. I'm just kidding.
I know. But due to the controversy.
What is the story of that again?
Okay, so
well, just that level you're talking about the.
Well, no, not even. Well, that just sets up like a lot of the stuff that happens in it, but like just the way that like the whole story is driven and the relationship with the characters, it feels like an action movie, but even better because you're literally are like the one fighting alongside with these characters, which is something I feel like in other FPSs like you do as well, but this was like different. This was like honestly probably one of the most personal interactions you have with like your quote unquote fire team, at least in my opinion.
Okay, what is the synopsis of this story for Modern Warfare 2?
So for Modern Warfare 2, you gotta keep in mind the world is kind of like how it is right now. There's just wars going on all over the place. I think there's pretty much still stuff going on in Afghanistan and all that.
Okay.
But we have our main bad guy, Makarov. He is a Russian-born terrorist.
It's a cool name.
He doesn't have any ideals. He doesn't abide by any laws. War crimes don't make him flinch. There's like a whole thing. That, really what Makarov wants to do is he wants to cause chaos in the world. He wants to start World War III. And that's really the premises of Modern Warfare 2. It's like the beginnings of what caused World War III. You start off as an American guy, you're going through tutorial stuff. But ultimately, you get to the mission where you are undercover as one of the guys on Makarov's team, right?
Okay.
And the controversial mission within Modern Warfare 2 is when you are in an airport as a terrorist and you're going around performing a terrorist act, like you are doing it undercover. By the end of that mission, what Makarov does is he knows you're a spy, so he kills you and leaves you as the American soldier there. Like people are able to call back that he's an American to that terroristic event. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So now the Americans... Also, I should also say this. The airport's in Russia. Sorry, I should have clarified that. So it's like the Russians are now pissed off because now there's an American related to this terrorist event in Russia, right? So that's got the U.S.-Russia tension at all-time high. From that point, you switch over to Task Force 141, which is like a super secret spec ops where you have Soap, Captain Price, Ghost, and all your guys. Yeah. Okay. Well, he was called Soap in the first game. It's still technically his call sign, but now at this game, he's Captain McTavish.
Is he like super clean?
Yeah, dude, he freaking cleans house, man. He goes to town.
He's gonna wash the crime away.
He's gonna. So you're
clean up the streets.
Trying to, as Soap and like the team, right? You're trying to go and find a trace of how you can now say that Makarov was the one behind this terrorist attack, right? It's like, hey, it's not the Americans, it's Makarov, right? So now you're going on missions to do that. But while that's happening, the Russians are actually planning an invasion on America. So now you're doing like a dual kind of campaign kind of thing. That's what kind of makes this important. Cool. Yeah, so you're swapping between different like groups. So you're like either the special task force or now you're an American soldier that's like fighting on like the American, like you're in DC, like fighting off Russians. Yeah.
What's the like culmination of this all?
Well, it comes to a head for like Act 2, I guess I could say, when the Spec Ops team goes to a secret base that they believe has intel on Makarov, but there's also a Russian nuclear sub there that they think that he has the ability to use nukes. So they're trying to also take over the sub. But by doing that, Captain Price, one of the guys from the previous game, he actually sends a nuke over to the US.
Dang, seems like they're doing a lot more harm than good.
But no. What he actually did there, by doing that, he did a above ground airburst with that, so it caused an EMP, so it actually saved a lot of American lives.
Oh, okay. Good for him.
So then on the American side, you're now trying to just reclaim the White House. On the Spec Ops side, General Shepard, which is like one of the main military guys, actually turns on the Spec Ops guys because he's trying to cut off all loose
secret
ends.
agent.
Yeah. So
Double
as soon as they like
agent.
reclaim the White House, General Shepard's like, "Hey, I have a blank check. I'm gonna just make sure I have no
okay.
ties connected to like the Spec Ops guys, and I'm gonna take care of Makarov myself." I know this is like kind of confusing without like being able to like.
What happens at the end? Like
At the end,
just a brief synopsis.
I know, but dude, there's a lot. That's why this game's so freaking good. So at the end, you as Soap and Captain Price go to General Shepard's secret military base, isolate him. You actually like drive off of like a waterfall, pretty badassly.
Dang.
And then you kill him, General
Wow.
Shepard. Yeah.
Okay. Does that resolves it?
And then that's pretty much the beginning of World War III.
Oh no, it doesn't
Yeah.
resolve it. Okay.
Yeah, because then there's Modern Warfare 3, and that goes into like the actual like World War 3.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There's a lot of twists and turns, a lot of things in the story.
Why do you think this is well told in a video game? Is it kind of the same thing? Like, just it's more fun to play it versus just watching those events unfold.
Well, that's the thing. If this one's kind of different, I feel like you can have a really good telling of this through TV or through cinema, but it's emphasized even more again with the personal relationships that you have with people. Like halfway through, like before General Shepard kills you, like you're losing guys and like you got guys. Well, actually, pretty much when General Shepard kills you and your guys, that's like a big turning point because like you're like, no, these guys have been playing with this entire game. They're all now dead. You know, like they're all just gone. You know,
that
so
kind of
it's
reminds me
just,
of Halo, as that like Halo Reach, your Spartans kind of die along the way.
yeah. It's again that power corrupts. Like everyone's just getting corrupted by power, trying to take what they can, and nothing really ends up good in the end.
Cool. What do you think it makes it just a good story? Like the kind of the power. I mean, I feel like war stories are like you have a built-in conflict there, so I think that's a very strong central conflict, and like you said, the compelling connections with like your teammates that you've been playing with like the whole time. Is there anything else?
I mean, it's really just a twist and turns as well. That's why I think it makes this one unique. Because again, like you were saying with war stuff, I mean, you have like like the U.S. versus the Germans, or the U.S. versus Russia, or whoever, really, because it's
U.S. versus everyone.
But no,
maybe
like
we're the problem. Maybe we're
potentially, just mayhaps. But no, like with this story, it was like it's not just we're causing the problem, or the problem's being caused to us. It's just like you don't really know who to trust. You don't know who you can rely on. And at the end of the day, like lines are being crossed that you didn't think were going to be crossed until they were. So yeah,
interesting. All right, anything else you want to talk about before we jump into the next story?
No, I think that's a good one for that one. What do you got for another one?
So for my last video game I wanted to talk about, wanted to talk about The Force Unleashed.
I knew it. I
think not necessarily like one of the greatest narrative stories like in video games. Like I feel like I know that I'm saying this is my last one. We could talk in the future maybe about like The Last of Us, or like Detroit Become Human, or like Life is Strange. Like those are like story driven video games that are like really long and interesting, but I haven't played those personally, so I'm speaking to the ones that I know. For me, The Force Unleashed is a really interesting story. It's in the Star Wars. It's now like Legends, so it's not canon or whatever, but it's within the Star Wars like universe and worlds that I find really interesting, so that's why I'm drawn to it. But it's the story of Darth Vader's secret apprentice in between episodes 3 and 4. And so for my brief synopsis of this, you start out, I guess the prologue, or like, beginning is when Darth Vader is wrapping up some war efforts on Kashyyyk, and he is like taking them out, basically. What about the Darth Vader attack on the Wookiees? He basically goes and just wipes out some Wookiees and then defeats this Jedi, because he's hunting Jedi, basically the last of the survivors from Order 66. And he kills the Jedi, but the Jedi had a son, or like a Padawan or someone that he was training, that Darth Vader doesn't kill. Like the stormtroopers are about to kill this kid, but Darth Vader sees he has force potential and stops the stormtroopers and takes this child in secret and trains him to be his Sith apprentice. And then it flashes forward after that incident to like the present day, or I guess like years later, and closer to episode 4 now than episode 3. And Starkiller is the name of this protagonist, has grown up, and Darth Vader starts having him go on secret missions, which is the game, but it's basically trying to get his power levels up so that he can take down the Emperor with Darth Vader and overthrow him. That's the promise that Darth Vader fills his ears with. And so he's going on mission after mission, hunting other Jedi that have managed to escape so he can prove himself to Darth Vader, and then they can overthrow the Emperor together. But then the Emperor catches wind of this, and the Emperor confronts Darth Vader about it, and Darth Vader like betrays,
he's caught with his pants down, and he's like, hey, I gotta kill you.
Betrays Starkiller and like stabs him, and to convince the Emperor that no, my loyalty is with you and you alone. But then Starkiller is like actually not dead, and he's like, he gets healed, and Darth Vader's like, all right, you need to basically like, Darth Vader is like, yo, go start the rebellion, like the Rebel Alliance, so that it distracts Palpatine, so that then we can overthrow Palpatine. And then he does that. So the next part is basically Starkiller going around gathering Jedi and rebels to organize to become a rebellion, so that it becomes a big enough threat that the Emperor will dedicate his resources to fighting these guys versus keeping a close eye on Darth Vader and Starkiller. But there's a change in that, which I think is the compelling part of the story, is that Starkiller realizes as he's on the field with these rebels and these liberators, he realizes based on their ideals that he might not agree with what Darth Vader is preaching, and he realizes like, oh, maybe these guys is the side I should be on. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm oppressing people as a part of the Empire. Like, Darth Vader's a bad dude. And he comes to that realization after being basically brainwashed his whole life. So it's cool to see that change. And then at the end, you fight Darth Vader, or you fight the Emperor. And I think you ultimately decide if you want to go to the light side or go to the dark side, and like you try to kill the Emperor, kill Darth Vader or not. And I think ultimately you die, but it has started the rebellion in this. It's not canon anymore, but that was the legend's way of how the rebellion started. Yeah. So it's the story of Darth Vader's secret apprentice that eventually starts a rebellion, which I think is a really interesting story.
Yeah, no, it was a good way to like, because between 3 and 4, before Rogue One, there wasn't really much there.
Before
in
Rogue
regards
One and
to
Clone
like
Wars and Rebels,
games or TV,
there was nothing there. And
well,
Obi-Wan, and I know you're right. Before all that, there was nothing. And then I think honestly, like once this started, like I think this came out 2008, which is around the same time that the Clone Wars movie and show started. But after, like, this was on the beginning of like, let's tell a million stories in between episodes 3 and 4, which now is like super oversaturated, but at the time was like so fresh and like refreshing. It was just like, whoa, this is sick. We're getting new Star Wars content that's fleshing out the lore in between the episodes, and it was like so sick to see.
Yeah.
So
again, Jake, what makes this special to you out of a game as compared to other media?
I really would seriously love like a Starkiller like game, or not game,
like, interesting you say that.
Movie or TV show. Like a movie or TV show. I think that would be really interesting to see if they pull it off well, like a episode where it's just like every episode's like a level where he's going to fight another Jedi or something.
Hasn't there been rumors about him coming in for Ahsoka?
There's been rumors for like years. Yeah, I don't know. There's rumors that he's like an Inquisitor or something. But I think the thing is, like, if he's canon, he's too OP. Like, he literally pulls a Star Destroyer out of the sky. So, like, you'd have to nerf him, I think.
Yeah.
But I think what makes it, again, interesting, kind of similar thing I was saying to Portal, I think it gets a little repetitive where you're just, like, going to a planet, and you fight all these, like, grunt guys, and then you fight a Jedi, and you repeat that, like, rinse and repeat 3 times. Yeah, and so I think watching that, I'd be like, okay, this is like the same as last episode, kind of like The Flash on the CW felt like to me, which is why I stopped watching that. But when it's a game and it's like, oh, it's a different world I'm exploring this time, and it's a different force power I get to experiment with this time, it keeps it fresh and exciting to me, the player. So I think I'm more forgiving when it's like that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like being able to hands-on control the exploration and the experience with like new abilities.
Even if it's like, again, kind of like a rinse and repeat, I think that makes sense for a video game, because if you're changing the mechanics every like level, that would not be a good video game, you know?
Depends, but yeah.
That might be cool, actually. Wait a minute, we might stumble onto an idea.
Dude, have you played Little Big Planet?
No, only like once at your house.
Dude, you gotta play that.
That's the concept of that.
Well, no, because it's like a sandbox, but in that sandbox, especially Little Big Planet 2, you're able to do. Dude, I was making all kinds of game modes and stuff in that, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt that was my Forge world in Halo Reach.
Yeah.
I think that the switch from like he was on the dark side and like the Empire side and then switches and kind of becomes more on the Rebellion side as he builds that and changes. I think that change is the central character arc that he goes on. I think that's what makes it a very compelling story.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I think in the second one, it doesn't do that as well. But we're not here to talk about that. I think he's more like just horny for Juno in the second one. And
Wait, really?
He's like, I'm a clone. Blah, what am I? Which like it could be interesting, but it's too much rinse and repeat in my mind. There wasn't that much growth compared to the first one. All right. Any other last minute Force Unleashed thoughts?
No, man. I think that pretty much covers that.
What is your last story game you want to?
It's funny because I was just playing it. Since you did a big IP one, I think I should do a big IP one. And this one also covers one of my favorite studios, which is Insomniac's Spider-Man PS4. Because that...
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's Spider-Man. It's such a good
just
light.
dropped off my roommate at the airport, and he told me he just finished the campaign for like the base game.
Nice.
Spoilers for this game, because it is a more recent game. I mean, spoilers for all of them. I should have said that up top, but spoilers for Spider-Man.
But no, so what's nice about this one is I feel like they did all the attributes that writers have taken about Peter Parker, Spider-Man over the last like decades, and they got all the proper ones, got them in the right spot, and had them in a really excellent story that can be compassionate and actually put him in a spot to where like he could change and still grow. You know?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Spider-Man has had so many iterations in film, TV, and games that they've had like a lot of time to like figure out what works and what doesn't. I think this is a good example of like them learning from that and making a good product because of it.
Yeah. So starting off, we have our Peter Parker Spider-Man guy. He's a little aged up. He's like early 20s. Honestly, he's probably about our age.
Which I like that they do that. I like that they get him out of the time that we've seen him in forever. Yeah. There was a comic run that I think I read that was like Peter Parker and like when he's like working just at the lab.
Is he like 24, 25, 26?
Yeah, I think he's like post grad school. Is he? I don't know.
Well, I'm just comparing it to me now because I'm like I'm about to be 25. I've been doing TA work for a couple years.
Spider-Man. What the heck? What have you been doing?
But
yeah.
But no, like it's funny. Well, no, and the game is funny because I was just playing it earlier, and I picked up like one of the backpacks.
Have you ever seen Daniel and Spider-Man in the same room together? That's what I thought.
Chick, don't give it away. But no, there's like he was a TA. He does stuff in the lab. He's a scientist and all that. Anyway, let's get into the synopsis. Okay, so he is aged up a good bit. And currently the game begins with him actually on the takedown of Kingpin. So Kingpin's doing his thing. You see that Spider-Man has a good relationship with the police. He's not a menace.
Yeah.
And they take down Kingpin. But what this does at the beginning of the game is opens up a whole rat's nest of problems for the rest of the game. Because once Kingpin was out of the way, there was a power vacuum that caused a lot of other people and gangs to try to uprise and take over the city. And one of the main players of this was Martin Lee.
I forgot there's so many villains in this.
Yeah, no, there are.
Mr. Negative, Dr. Negative, whatever his name is.
So he's Mr. Negative. And it's funny because like you start off with him being like a super nice guy. He works out of the community shelter that he started up called Feast.
Aunt May helps that.
Aunt May also works there as well. But it turns out that he's a big bad guy, and Peter ends up having to put him away, which he does pretty much in the first act.
I think this story does character relationships really well, like Aunt May,
really does.
And I think it works well that you know this IP very well, and like it can build off of that, and also like change things in ways you haven't really seen before. I think it does that in a really good way. Yeah,
like it can develop relationships in different ways.
Yeah,
which is nice. That's one of the things I like actually about MJ, which is something that also is going on with Peter during this whole time. He's trying to rebuild that relationship with her as she's actually a reporter now.
Because they were together and they kind of broke up.
They broke up. Yeah, so they broke up. Peter was with Black Cat for a little bit. They broke up, and now he's just been, doing his thing.
Peter is a dog.
My boy dog in it, yeah. Oh, man. But, yeah, so after all the stuff goes on with Martin Lee, we then get into Act 2. Dr. Octavius and Norman arc.
Doc Ock. Norman's like sick, right?
Doc Ock is sick. Yeah, he has a neurological problem. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's trying to use his technology that he and Peter have been working on to kind of like enhance himself, and this eventually leads to him using like his own version of Neuralink. At Elon. To uses robotic arms, so that makes him go crazy. Like he
kind of like
goes off the rocker.
In Spider-Man 2, yeah.
Yeah, kind of exactly like in Spider-Man 2. He goes to the raft to break out all of Spider-Man's
That's the high
previous
security
villains.
prison.
Yeah, the raft. Yeah, I was going to explain that.
I'm helping.
So yeah, the raft is the high security prison that all the big bad villains are at. So there's a whole sequence to where you are revealed that all the Sinister
It'd be
Six.
funny if it was just like a literal raft, like just some wood that all the villains are just stuck on the ocean in the ocean. On.
It's like they're like, move over. I don't have enough. Like Rhino's just like just like leaning over. Oh my god. But no, there's one thing I really liked about this iteration too is it showed that Doc Ock like armored and like gave new suits to all the classic bad guys.
I also like that Doc Ock is like way more of a mentor to Peter. So it was building on like it's a stronger relationship that at the end when he has to like fight him is like
it's
way more difficult,
so
more emotionally invested. Yeah.
Yeah. But we get enemies like Scorpion, Electro, Vulture, Rhino, Mr. Negative, and then
I
Doc
feel like
Ock
and I feel
six.
like they're not. It sounds like a lot, but I think they balance it pretty well. And like if it's not like your Doc Ock or like Mr. Negative, like the heavy hitters, like the main guys, like they're just kind of like they're kind of like
B tier, yeah,
B tier villains that don't like distract you from the main storyline, but it just adds like, oh, it's cool, I'm fighting Rhino right now, or like
Electro. It's also nice too because you are more experienced Peter, like it makes sense that he's able to take these guys down and like
more easily.
A couple missions, yeah.
Yeah.
So like it makes sense to how that's like systemically working, which is pretty nice to see. But this all kind of comes to a head when it gets to Act 3 to when there's this thing called what is it, Dragon's Breath or Devil's Breath? Devil's Breath.
Yeah.
Which is a virus that gets released out into the city by Doc Ock. And Devil's Breath is actually a thing developed by Norman Osborn. He's actually trying to use to heal Harry, his son, but that we can get into that later. But right now it's like a very invasive virus, and Doc Ock lets it out to try to get back at Norman Osborn, which is kind of like his main thing. And during this process, Aunt May actually gets infected. Yeah. So now Peter has to balance out between, hey, do I act and do things for my personal, what's going on personally, or do I?
Final culmination is like so sad. Again, major spoilers. Do not get this next part spoiled if you haven't seen it. But like I remember at the end, he has to choose if he's going to save Aunt May's life. They basically have enough of this cure to either save one person immediately, or they have to take it and study it in a lab so they can determine like what makes it up, so they can make more of it. But then it would use all of it up, and they wouldn't be able to cure anyone in that moment. And Aunt May's like about to die, and so Peter has to make the ultimate Spider-Man sacrifice, which is putting the greater good of others before his own personal interests. So he has to let Aunt May die in his arms so that he can save the city, which is just the biggest lesson of Spider-Man, which is so sad and done very well here, but it's so emotional and it's good.
Yeah, dude, it's heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking. Not to mention too, when Aunt May revealed that she knew that Peter was Spider-Man, when she was like, "Take that mask off. I want to see the face of my nephew." I was like,
yeah. So I think this is an interesting one to ask the question. Like you've been asking me like, what makes this video game better? Or sorry, what makes this story told better through the lens of a video game versus like film or TV? Why? What do you think? Why do you think
this is where Insomniac comes into play?
Well, why do you think that's the case for this one? Because we have Spider-Man movies and TV shows that are also fantastic. So why is this story specifically better for a video game?
Yeah, this is where Insomniac comes into play for this answer, right? Because Insomniac, whenever they're developing games, they make sure that they have all kinds of the mechanics done perfectly. And that's something that came out with this game. Like, there's been many generations of different Spider-Man games, and there was some good ones, and then there was like really bad ones, right? There's also bad ones narratively too. So like sometimes you just got like a really like bad.
Yeah, that's what I say. I don't think it's just the mechanics. Like I completely agree that the mechanics are amazing and like top tier in this one, but I think the story.
Well, no, it's both. It's hand in hand. Like the story is so strong and carries emotionally with
like
Peter.
What specifically? That's what I'm asking. Like, why is this story better for a video game compared to a movie or TV show?
Oh, the story. Well,
yeah.
That's the thing. I don't know if the story itself is reliant on the game in this one. Honestly, I feel like if this was a movie, because this is a very cinematic game as well. I feel like this probably could be told as a movie.
I think there's too much content. I think this one might have been too long for a movie.
Yeah.
So, but like a TV
That's like
show,
the only drawback. Which is never a
this
bad
would have
thing.
been this would have been a cool TV show probably actually.
Yeah.
Because there's way like different like imagine if like the first season's like the just the whole Mr. Negative part and then it like switches. Like I think that could be cool actually.
Dude, that would be dope actually. Yeah.
And then the next part is Doc Ock kind of going crazy and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, dude. For story-wise, I could see that working very well as a show if it was paced out right. That's the big thing.
Right. I think.
But again,
I think also what you said though, the appeal of the mechanics, like swinging a Spider-Man, is a big draw to it.
Yeah, I mean that was the first thing that Insomniac focused on when developing this was the mobility and the traversal, because they knew if they didn't get that right, then it wasn't going to be a good Spider-Man game. I think one of the worst Spider-Man games is probably the Amazing Spider-Man 1, to where it's like this really janky like. It was still third person
because the Amazing Spider-Man had great swinging in the game.
In the movie, yeah.
Or in the movie, my bad.
But like in game, it just felt so jank and weird. And they kind of had a unique thing for the second Amazing Spider-Man game, where if you did like the left bumper or right bumper, you do like the left hand or right hand, which helped with like banking on turns and stuff like that.
I remember
like,
that.
It really didn't land well. Like it wasn't doing good. But this, they focused so much on maneuverability, learned a lot from the OG boss, Spider-Man 2 for PS2. Dude, that was freaking, because it relied fully on physics. But what they did with this one, it was a combination of physics with like their own traversal methods and all that. And all in all, they accomplished that right. And then again, with it being a more mature Peter and using all the gadgets, like it just makes sense with the different gadgets and abilities that you're able to use. So everything just worked out together narratively, mechanically, and just game wise to allow this to be a great game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other last minute Spider-Man story thoughts you wanted to comment on?
Rio be a baddie no matter the universe.
All right. You ready to jump into Patron shoutouts? Ready for...
Yeah, hit me with them.
Cue the stars music. Booshka, Patron, Louis, Frank, Rick, Lisa, Evan, Tony. Thank you so much for pledging the tier. Thank you to the shout out. Thank you to supporters over on Patreon. Like it's down in the description. Get the audio episode early. Special benefits, cool perks, a lot of jazz and more. Thank you seriously, sincerely to our Patreon supporters. For cool comments, please, if you would like us to do this episode concept in the future where we do like more like video game stories, leave your suggestions for video games you want us to talk about the stories of. Let us know what your favorite video game or story told through a video game is. I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
And for cool comments on our food episode, the fast food questions, which restaurant chain is the best, Josh McIntyre commented, love the ep. I may have missed it, but you guys didn't mention Zambreros. It's my favorite food that's not fast food tier 1. And I looked it up, Zambreros. I believe Josh is from Australia, and I looked it up and it's like an Australian company, which is probably why we haven't been to Zambreros. But I looked it up and apparently
are there any in the US?
There is like some in outside of Dayton, Ohio. Zambrero. There's like 2 right outside Dayton, Ohio, and that is it in the United States apparently. So that is one thing I guess Ohio has going for it. Probably the only thing. It has
it's like a Mexican. Is it like the Australian Casa Bonita? Is that?
Maybe.
Casa Bonita, Casa Bonita. Da, 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 da.
Josh McIntyre also commented, in Australia, they just have Macca's, Hungry Jack's, which is Burger King's Australian branch, and KFC. Yeah. And they said, in my opinion...
KFC's fucking everywhere.
Hungry Jack's has better chicken than KFC. So, like, the Burger King Australian branch has better chicken than Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Well, KFC is very, like, when you get out of the U.S., I mean, U.S. is already iffy, but
when you get out of Kentucky.
When you get out of, well, even when you get out of Kentucky, but when you get out of the U.S. for KFC, it just gets bad.
Yeah.
Like, bad. I heard that, like, Japanese KFC is, like, the worst.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Maybe it's European, right. like British, I don't know.
Well, thank you for the comments. Love talking about food, so we will talk about food more if you want. All right, ready for the introduction.
Tell me when.
When?
We just talk about whatever we want to talk about, and now we're done.
Thank you seriously, sincerely for listening. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next time. I think we're talking food again next time, so stay tuned for that. We have a special guest, so subscribe for that. See you next time. Goodbye.
What?